What's going on, crew? Stefi Cohen here. Welcome back to Big on the Basics. Today we're going to be talking about the deadlift, specifically the sumo deadlift. When it comes to the sumo deadlift, I like to start from the ground up and covering each point of the lift and each area of your body point by point, so I can give you guys the best information, the best pointers. The first thing to take into account is your stance width. This is definitely going to be determined by the amount of adductor flexibility and strength that you personally have. Usually we see that girls have a much easier time getting into this position just because they're more flexible, but they might not be strong in that position. So that's, even if you can get into that position, then making sure that you can develop and produce the adequate amount of strength in that position progressively so that you can avoid groin and adductor injuries. So that's important to consider. And if you're a guy, you might have issues getting into that position. You might start getting into it with a more narrower stance, which is also okay. It's all about doing what works for you and what works for your body. It's not about imitating someone else's movement. So once you have your stance width picked, you want to make sure that you pick a point on the barbell to serve as your guide for future reps, so that you can make every single rep look exactly the same and you can replicate the movement every time that you're in front of the bar. Second thing is your hand placement. It's important that some of your fingers, at least if you're a petite girl, it's tough because ideally you want to have your shoulder, your elbow, and your wrist in a straight line. So you don't want to be too far out, you don't want to be too far in, you want to be just in line. So if you're a small girl, you might need to go a little bit wider so that one or two of your fingers are touching the knurling of the bar, because when your fingers are on the knurling, then that allows you to have a stronger, better grip of the bar and prevent the bar from slipping. So once you've established that, then it's a matter of deciding whether you want to use a mixed grip or you want to use a double overhand with a hook grip. And of course that it requires some time to be able to define and determine which one is going to be the one that works the best for you. And when I say time, it takes months to be able to see whether or not you'll be able to develop enough strength in one or the other. But technically speaking, a mixed grip position is a stronger position, because think about it like a tug of war. In a tug of war, when no one's winning, when the tension is even, here, imagine that the bar is the rope. So you'll have 4 fingers on this side and then 4 fingers on this side and then 1 finger here and 1 finger there. It's even, so that'll allow you to be able to generate the most amount of force. Whereas when you're here, it's a little bit more challenging. You'll be relying more on your ability to maintain that hook grip position, which can be very painful and it's not for everyone. But I encourage you to try both and see which one works best for you. Now that we're getting to the top, you have your stance width, you've determined, you have your grip, you have the grip width and the preferred grip style. Now it's a matter of determining your own personal starting position for the lift. So it is a common misconception that you always see people correcting others, coaches or other lifters, in regards to how high up your hips should start or how low your hips should start. But like anything, it's dependent on your body proportions, so you shouldn't be trying to imitate someone else. And the way that I like to determine that and to find what position works best for my athletes is by doing a slow eccentric deadlift starting at the top. So the only thing you're going to need to do is you grab the bar and you start here and you do basically a top-down deadlift. So what you'll do is, the most important thing is you need to initiate the movement by hinging from the hip. So you don't want to start by sitting, because this is not going to be the true position of your deadlift. You want to start by hinging at the hip, letting your chest, lead with your chest, let your chest fall forward, let your hips go back, and then bend at the knee. And when you do that slow descent, as soon as the plates touch the floor, then that's going to be your starting position. Not here, not here, whatever that position that you ended at was when you did the slow descent deadlift. So remember, hinge at the hips, let your chest lead, bend your knees, and wherever the bar ends, that's your starting position. The ideal scenario would be that you can maintain an upright torso when you're at the bottom of the deadlift, but like I said, it's gonna be mostly determined by your body positions. For example, someone that has a long torso and really short arms will never, ever be able to get into that position. It just won't happen. Athletes who prefer the sumo deadlift are generally have longer arms and shorter torsos. That's what allows them to get into better positions. And think about it as like natural selection of lifting. I mean, you're never gonna see a basketball player who's 5 foot tall. It's just, they're not made for that particular sport. The same thing you need to consider when you're choosing your lifting style, your positions. It's what do you have, what are you working with, and how can you capitalize on what you have and make it work for you. That's essentially what you need to think about. Most important aspect of any lift is the starting position. And the analogy that I like to use is the bow and arrow. You are never gonna see a professional archer be sloppy in the way that they shoot, right? The most important portion of shooting an arrow is gonna be the cocking back of the arrow, like that initial portion, because that's gonna determine where the arrow is gonna go. You should think about your sumo deadlift the same exact way. This is such a technical lift that even a variation of 1 millimeter, the bar being forward, is gonna get you completely out of position. So you should definitely be very focused and very aware of the ways that you're moving your body and pay attention to the starting position of the deadlift, which is what I'm gonna talk about now. So in a sumo deadlift, for some reason, it takes a little bit longer for the bar to leave the floor. So patience is number one. You wanna make sure that you begin by generating tension from your feet, from your legs, all the way into the ground. And you scoot your hips in, get yourself into position, and from there begin to generate tension onto the bar. Instead of the mistake that a lot of people make is that they like yank it like that. You don't wanna do that. You wanna do it patiently, sink your hips into the bar, try to get them as close as possible, engage your lats, and slowly bring the bar off the floor. So again, get your hips close to the bar, generate tension, bring the bar off the floor. You'll see as the weight gets heavier and heavier. If you've seen me pull anytime, it seems as if the bar's never gonna leave the floor. And sometimes it takes like, seriously, like what it feels to me like a minute, but it's probably, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds sometimes for the bar to leave the ground. But once that bar is off the ground, it flies up. So just patience, generate tension, and make sure that you're always on point with the starting position of the deadlift. And finally, what shoes should you wear when you do sumo deadlifts? You want to wear the shoe that allows you to be as closer to the ground as possible. You don't want to wear anything with a cushion or anything with a high heel or anything like that. The lower that you can be to the ground, the better. Now they're making deadlift slippers, which is essentially just a sock cover. Like they look like ballerina slippers. They're really, really thin, really close to the floor. Those are really good. Personally, I like to use Chucks. They have a little bit, Chuck Slims, so they have a little bit of a heel, but I like the ankle support because for me, sometimes when I do my sumo deadlifts, my feet roll out because of how externally rotated my feet are. So I like to have a little bit of ankle support so that my feet are not rolling to the outside of the shoe. And that was it for Big on the Basics Deadlift Edition. I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned some useful tips. See you guys next time.